My panel, we're stretching from Chicago to Memphis this week. Otis Hanford is ABC24's political analyst. Pepper Baker is my co-anchor here at ABC24. She's joining me as well. And we'll also have Deidre Malone. As I mentioned, she is in Chicago, was there for the convention. Not as a delegate, right, Deidre, but you have a position as president with the National Women's Political Caucus, which is why you were at the convention.
That's correct, Richard.
So tell me about it. I know you're biased. But it was quite a show, and I think when you hear so many Republicans, as I have this week, say, wow, this was a hard convention to beat. It really went off without a hitch. That tells you something.
Let me just say, I've been crying each and every day. You know, you start with day one. I mean, of course, Hillary Clinton had me crying. When I think about 2016 and from 2016 to where we are today, she kind of laid the path. She and Shirley Chisholm kind of laid the path for Kamala Harris. And so her message was so profound. Then you go to Tuesday with Michelle Obama and former President Obama. Just amazing. I mean, Michelle, you know, I'm sure the president probably thought he should have gone before his wife because she laid it out and just talked about how important it is for voters to pay attention to this election. Our democracy is on the line, and everybody should get out and vote. And then Wednesday night was amazing as well. When you think about learning so much about Governor Tim Walz and just learning about his background and learning even more about the vice president, Wednesday night was amazing. And then, you know, let's go ahead and just talk about last night. The vice president laid out a case, in my opinion, this AKA right here, who was in the House and was glad to be there for my Sarah, laid out the case about why she should be the next president of the United States. And it was just electric.
We're showing video
it was such a diverse crowd.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, the diversity, but also a lot of talk this week about how something that Democrats haven't done in recent conventions was the use of the flag and cheering USA and patriotism and the taking back the word freedom even. What were your thoughts about that?
Well, let me just say, when former CIA director and former Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta joined us last night, he laid out the case for why she should be the next president of the United States. You know, he's a former military man, and he talked about how she cares about veterans, and she's shown that working with Vice President Joe Biden. And so, you know, everybody spoke to the fact that, you know, the United States has a level of respect internationally because of their involvement in NATO and how they've been great partners across this country. And that, you know, with this election, democracy is at stake because they're fearful of what the former President Trump, may do if he is elected. You know, he talked about pulling out of NATO at one point when he was the president. So, you know, all those concerns were laid out. And I think a case was truly made that there is a new way forward. And Vice President Kamala Harris laid that out. And it was just electric at the convention this week.
Indeed. And despite all that, though, everyone's predicting still a very, very tight, very close election as we get closer to November. Yeah. Otis, I know you wanted to ask Deidre a question about the Tennessee delegation in particular. Before we do, I want to show you one of the highlights from during the roll call, which was not boring at all. It must have been fun to be a part of that party. Yeah. But anyway, let's watch what Justin Pearson had to say. He was the one who basically spoke for the Tennessee delegation on that night.
From the bluffs of Memphis to the peaks of Mountain City, the movement for justice rooted in love in Tennessee is still strong. It is a movement where kids are free from gun violence, a movement where women have the right to choose, a movement where working people get access to economic opportunity, a movement where those who have been pushed to the periphery are brought to the center, a movement where those who have been pushed down are lifted up. It is alive in Tennessee because we believe that justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream, which is why we are so proud to have been the first state in the union to have pledged all of our delegates to Kamala D. Harris. 72 votes for the first woman and next president of the United States, Kamala D. Harris.
They weren't having any fun at all, were they?
No, really bored. As we say in the Baptist church, and let the church say amen.
Let the church say amen, yes.
But Deidre,
Exactly.
I do have a question for you. First of all, obviously, this convention was, number one, entertaining, number two, uplifting, and number three, inclusive. But as we saw in that clip, there was a heavy emphasis on young people. As a matter of fact, I was told that the Democratic Party specifically wanted, when it got to Tennessee, Justin Pearson and Hendra Oremus, who is the chair of the state Democratic Party, to be the spokespeople for Tennessee. I'm not sure that set very well with Steve Cohen. He was also standing there. But can you talk a little bit about just how the whole emphasis was on the youth and the youth vote and the youth membership within the Democratic Party?
And let me just say, Representative Pearson did an outstanding job. I think he missed his calling. He should be a Baptist preacher. But when you think about that convention, I mean, Otis, from the vice president's grandnieces, right? Telling people how to pronounce her name, from all of the young social, influencers who were there, excited about being there to share the story about the Harris Waltz campaign. I mean, throughout, even, there was Representative Underwood from Illinois who talked about she's the youngest person was the youngest person in Congress. And now Representative Frost out of Florida, who is now the youngest person in Congress. So there was a real big focus on, trying to get young people to see the value in understanding, being educated on why it's so important for them to get out and vote. And then I think also playing to the fact of those things that they're interested in, right? They're interested in the economy, but they're also interested in, gun control. When it comes to gun violence in this country, they're interested in knowing, what is your government going to do about that? Of course, reproductive freedom. You had so many young women there who were interested in, wanting to have autonomy over their own body. And the vice president talked about what she'd like to do. And then immigration reform. They talked about how Democrats put together a bipartisan immigration deal, and the former President Trump, asked his colleagues in the House to not move forward with it. So young people were energized and engaged, and I just have to give a shout out to the young delegate from Tennessee, Dottie Ferreira, who is a 21-year-old student from Swanee of the South, who was there and was so excited to be there representing Tennessee. So young people were in full effect at this convention. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
When we talk about young people, we know Gen Z has been very vocal about the war in Gaza. And I do feel like Vice President Kamala Harris is taking a little bit of a different approach than President Biden, with saying, Israel has the right to defend itself against Hamas, but there shouldn't be innocent, people getting killed in Gaza. Right. So, Deidre, I'm curious to know what you have to say just about her stance and her speech about that, because that will appeal to so many Gen Z voters.
I was so glad, Pepper, to hear her position last night, because I think a lot of us were waiting to just see if she was going to deal with it, because we know it's such an important issue. So was very proud of the fact that she said there's atrocities going on in Gaza, and that she's going to always be supportive of what's, Israel and their rights, but that there should be something that should be done pretty quickly to try and stop this war for moving forward. So I think she was very, very clear And I'm glad she approached it last night.
I got to ask you about the Tennessee 3 appearance on the last night of the convention. I know they got bumped. The rumor mill was all over the place on social media that Beyonce was going to be making a guest appearance, unexpected appearance that, I know, you're like, it never happened. Pepper was the same way.
I was heartbroken. I was very heartbroken.
But what are you hearing? Like, what did happen there? Why were they bumped? Was it a matter of just time? Or?
I think Richard, I really do think it was a matter of time, because I was actually, when I drove to the hotel, I shared a car with Representative Pearson's communications lead. And I said, I understand that the Tennessee 3 are going to be speaking tonight. And she just kind of, Wednesday or Thursday night, and she kind of smiled. She said, I can't talk about it, but I am looking at the script. So we do know that it was supposed to happen, but I think it was a timing issue. And then with Representative McBath and those other gun violence victims who were there, it probably was more of a timing issue than anything else.
Yeah, and plus they really wanted Vice President Harris to get into prime time and not go late like President Biden did on Monday night. So I think that's why they got bumped. But they did get a lot of national press. They were interviewed both Justin Jones and Justin Pearson were interviewed by the national media.
And a lot of talk too about.
Well, Gloria Johnson is the one who needs the national media because of the fight that she's in right now in the state.
No question.
Was there much talk about that at the convention on the floor about her fight with Marsha Blackburn? Because that's obviously the only statewide contest coming up in November. Here.
Great deal of talk about that. My hope is, and I think, I was glad to see Gloria was there, shaking a lot of hands. But people were talking about, her race in Tennessee. So that was pretty exciting. And then just also want to mention, I was so happy to see when the veterans were asked to come on stage that our own leader, Karen Camper, minority leader in the Tennessee House, Karen Camper, who is a retired Army veteran, was asked to come on stage for that.
Great.
So.
Well, a lot going on for sure. And